Welcome to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, the show that puts the spotlight on the incredible women who fuel the world of motorsports. From drivers to crew members, engineers to fans, and everyone in between, we're here to celebrate the trailblazers, dreamers, and doers shaping the sport we love. Each episode, we share inspiring stories of females of all ages, from every corner of the motorsports universe, past, present, and future. It's a journey through the seasons of life filled with heartfelt moments, laughter, and a whole lot of horsepower. So whether you're a lifelong fan, a racer yourself, or simply curious about the extraordinary women behind the wheel, settle in, relax, and enjoy a fun and uplifting ride with us. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, connecting and celebrating women in motorsports, one story at a time. Let's hit the track. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, and you're in for a treat today. My guest is Landspeed Louise, and if you haven't heard of her, then you are really going to enjoy this podcast because we're going to learn all about her and how she got from the beginning of her racing story to where she is now. But first, Louise, I would like for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. Let's start at the beginning. I'm a kid from the south side of Chicago, and I am, since I've been about a year old, 50% deaf. So sounds were always, little magic things to me to be able to hear. And across the street, the doctor's son, he liked to play with foreign sports cars, and they'd wind them up and they were nice guys. And they always let me watch out because I would go over, like the snake to the sound, and there I was. And then they decided that I was useful because my little hands could get in places their big meaty paws couldn't get. And I learned about needle valves very young. So that's part of it. And then, of course, all I wanted to do was drive quicker and drive sooner than anybody else. And that's part of what I did. Anything that I could do, I wanted to do, but we didn't have money, big money. I am not your 16-year-old kid that got a brand new shiny car on her. But I can draw, and God gave me this ability to draw and paint. And I realized that I could make money if I could write their names or draw their pictures on the side of their cars, something like what's on behind me there. And so I would trade. I would make them buy the brushes, buy the paint, buy the gold leaf, and I would put it on their, and then I would say, but if I really like their car.
Louise, I'm going to stop you for a second. You keep cutting in and out.
Oh.
Is your internet giving you issues or anything?
No, but let me tell you what, let me disconnect this. Sometimes the echoes, the Amazon stuff does that. I've got most everything turned off.
Okay. All right.
Try it now.
We're just gonna carry on. So you
Okay.
You went to the neighbors and you learned about cars. And how old were you then?
Well, I'm going to say about seven
Okay.
or 8 years old, second or third grade.
Okay.
And then that graduated into painting the cars. And if I liked the car, I would say, okay, I did this artwork. If I do this, I'll do it for free, but you have to buy the stuff. But I want to drive your car for 1.3 hours or 2.5 hours. And they would mostly agree, but not in the neighborhood because they didn't want anybody, and neither did I, to think that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't want to go out with you. I want to go out with your car. And that's essentially how I learned to drive. By the time I got my license legally, I had driven every major hot rod and muscle car that there was. They weren't called muscle cars at the time, but what I could do with a GTO and an SS, and they were very good about it. They thought it was hysterical because most girlfriends didn't want to drive. And so that was it. That artwork also led me into professional racing because I learned how to paint and do fancy colors and, if people remember in the day, Mattel had this thing for the Hot Wheels, and you would have this thing on the Hot Wheel thing on Wednesdays, this big thing with the snow, Don, the Snake Perdome, Gene Snow, the Snowman, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, well, they would crunch those things up on Wednesday, and they'd have to go somewhere by Friday. Well, on Thursday and Friday morning, we could fix them and send them on the road. So I learned a lot about that. And then that was okay. That was great. I went to the drag races, learned all about that. But the day I remember the hearing, and met my first jet car, all those pistons could take a back seat. I was just fascinated. And essentially, long story short, ended up racing for several years, a J46 jet dragster with a fellow by the name of Doug Rose, the Green Mamba. And that was what I did for a living. My parents thought I needed a psych eval because I gave up my job as the general manager of Tonotapes division. I was part of Universal Recording Corporation. We used to do all the sound and everything for the Grammy Awards. I mean, this was a big deal. And I quit to run away to the jet car circuits.
Oh, my.
And then after a while, living out of a suitcase for several years, you go, And one day somebody came up to me while I was packing one of the parachutes from Hot Rod magazine, or was it Popular Hot Rodding? I don't remember, but one of the rags, and said, we'd like to do a story on this, but we don't know how to write about the motor. I said, well, I can do that. Because we didn't have money for PR people, I learned how to be a photographer to take the pictures of the car and write the press releases so that we would go to the press and to the television stations. So that's how I became a writer and a photographer. And more of the photography, not just because I wanted to take a pretty picture, but you tune a jet, not on a dyno. You tune it when it's running. So you need a picture of that thing at the finish line with the big giant, strip of fire out the back to see what you're actually doing with the fuel control. So I would go understand that we were in Arizona, or we were in Denver, or we were wherever, and I would get the pictures back because I would always shoot with slide film so we could get it processed in a couple hours. So if we tested on Thursday, because we really did want to kick the butt of the boys that showed up Friday and Saturday.
Yes.
I could figure out for the density altitude what we both did. I mean, I'm not saying I was in charge. Doug and I did this, but he was fascinated to have a girl to do this. I didn't read Women's Day. I read the military manuals on how these things ran. I to this day still know what they do. I know what the Blue Angels do.
Yes, we talked about that.
Yeah. So anyway, that was how I did that. And the person that came up and said, okay, so I wrote the story and they published it. And I said, okay, great. Because they wouldn't leave me alone. And I illustrated the inside of a jet engine so people could understand how they worked, the axial flow. And my metaphor with that, and I can tell everybody here, you want to think about a jet car or think about a jet engine? Think about a molecule of air, one little molecule of air, and it goes flying into the compressor section. It's all these blades that just smash, 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 and it goes smaller and smaller and smaller and go, oh. Think about scrunching up your pillow. And then it goes into the combustion chamber and it gets squirted with fuel. Poof, okay? And then the igniters go on. Okay, you're all like this, and then they give you a bath, and then you go, wow, and explode, and it goes flying out of in the turbine wheel, which then spins the engine a little quicker. And then you think you're done. Oh my gosh, I'm at least I'm getting out of here. I'm expanded. Oh no, we have a little more fuel for you. That's the afterburner. And then we reignite that, and that's what makes that gorgeous ribbon of fire in various colors out the back end. And that's how a jet engine works. I can give you more tech, but it's just, in and out. So I just thought that was the funnest thing to do. And when I got home from racing, I got a big surprise about that story. There was a check. They paid you to do it. I did this without any knowledge that I was going to get paid. And I thought, wait a minute, I could go to the races. They'll pay me to go to the races and I don't have to get dirty and I don't have to do this. And I thought, I can make some extra money. And so I started writing freelance because I could write about something that they didn't have anybody that understood, or the ones that thought they understood were full of baloney. And that's how I get into some of the fights with the guys because, well, we know better. No, you don't. You don't know. So that's kind of how it went. And then eventually, as I was flying back and forth before I actually ran away permanently to the jet circuit, I was working and I would run off. I'd get everything done at the studio, get on the plane at O'Hare, run off to wherever we were racing. This was the first year. And then come back on a red eye either late Sunday or Monday morning and put the studio together and work all week. On one of those flights, I met a gentleman who was best friends with Gordon Cooper. Gordon Cooper was one of the Mercury 7 astronauts, and he had just gotten a job with Disney for WED, which is Walter Elias Dean, the think tank. And they were about to build Epcot down in Florida. And his friend said, "Oh, you need to meet this one." So I met him and he hired me, and that's how I finished. I'd always wanted to work for the mouse. So I was a design engineer for Epcot for about 2 months until Human Resources said, "Sorry, we're having a hard time finding your credentials from college, your degree." I said, "Well, you can continue to look, but I've only had a couple of classes of things I needed to know about. I don't have a degree." And the long shot was that they would allow me to work, but I had to work for a pay commensurate with my education. And in that case, I would have had to pay for minimum wage, but working as a full class engineer. And I said, "Okay, so does that mean that I can sleep here in the studio? Because I can work, I can drive, I can eat or pay my rent, but I can't do all of them for what you're going to pay me. And I really want to do this." "No, that's up to you. We don't do anything like that." So I talked to Gordo and I said, I don't know what to do. And he went to bat, and even a Mercury 7 astronaut got shot down by Human Resources. And I left, and I was in tears in the parking lot. One of the guards came over and he said, "You're not the first one." He said, I kind of knew what happened. And on that night, drink. And that's where somebody said, "Come on, party. We're going to a party later." One of the racer fails. Peterson Publishing is giving this party. So I went and they were looking for an editor. I said, "What's an editor do? Because I need a job."
Yeah.
And I became, again, long story, I became the first and what I know the only female editor in charge at a Peterson Publishing. I became the Hot Rod Performance and Custom Directory editor in 1979, which also helped produce SEMA Show. We created the Hot Rod Nationals, the Carcraft Nationals, and then the stuff for the Bunny Killers for the Guns and Roses. And that's until I got into so many fights with John Deanna, I was going to punch him in the face, and I thought I didn't want to go to jail, so I quit. But that was a lot of fun because he used to take advantage of women, and I just wouldn't let him do it. But I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of people in the industry. I started writing for magazines, newspapers all over the country, all over the world. And I realized that I'm an unemployable woman. I can work for anybody for short periods of time, but I only will work with people that I respect and can teach me. I'm working for them. And so that's kind of been my life. I started a company called Landspeed Productions. We got a problem?
No, go ahead. My husband couldn't hear me talking. And that's because I'm just listening. I'm so like just entranced in your story. Oh, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of where I went. And when I formed Landspeed Productions, it was, again, I quit another magazine because they wanted me to sell ads because I knew all these people. And I said, "I don't want to sell ads. I want to write stories." I was doing investigative journalism, and I was working with SEMA at the time when the California Air Resources Board was at war with the hot rodders about, "You can't put this under the hood. You can't take this off. Detroit knows best. Oh, baloney, drink my bath water." They build things to get you to the grocery store and back. They don't build it to make it the best running car.
Nope.
No. They want you to come in off the street, give them money and go away. And then they want you to come to the service bay.
Yes.
We can fix it. And, unless you folks understand that clean is mean, you might have it loud. It might be a little rich. It might be a little lean, but that's kind of stupid tuning. A properly tuned engine is a strong engine. And the hot rod folks, if they want to go fast, they're going to make sure it's right. So we started something with SEMA, with the general counsel, Rustine, and Bob Birch, who was the tech dude there at SEMA. And essentially we got it so that the federal government would play games with, or play with the hot rodders to say, look, you're looking at these 3 pollutants in the air. How about we show you that we can not only beat that, but knock those out, but by putting our hot rod stuff on there, and we will run it through the top tailpipe and show you that we are clean and mean. And so when that was proven, that began a deal. I did a major article in Four Wheeler magazine called Vehicle Arrest, where I went through the entire country. I talked to every single state that had any type of controls on the vehicles, whether it be hot rods or just, and said, what are your deal? How do you do it? And many of them didn't know jit squat. I mean, they were bureaucrats, but they didn't understand the mechanical end. And a lot of what we did is we taught them, and we started to work together. And essentially that's when the California Air Resources Board went, well, maybe we can work together. Maybe you're not the enemy. Ta-da! And that continues to this day. There were a number of many people that were involved. I worked with Beck Edelbrock on that, Johnny Lingenfelter. I'm going to forget a bunch of it. Stu Hilborn. Ed Escuderian. Think of the stickers on the side of the cars these days. I worked with all those people, and we put a lot of that together to make that something that we could be trusted. And that's how some of the federal things got done. So that was a lot of fun, and that's a lot of how I made my pennies, and taking pictures and stuff like that. So it was great because I could run my own show, and when somebody made me upset, or when someone was, I'll just say it, if they're a dick, I just quit.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I make a lot of enemies that way because I'm not demure, and I'm not quiet. I'm heard before I'm seen sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you don't let people push you around, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, and not let them push others around. And it occurred to me, which is shameless self-promotion, which ended up being the subject of my latest book. But as the years went on, I could see that a lot of women tried to do things, but it's what I call itty bitty shitties. They had itty bitty shitties thrown at them for whatever reason that they never threw at the guys. Mm-hmm. But this was one way to just kind of trip them up.
Yep.
Walking down the aisle, just stick your foot out when she's not looking.
Mm-hmm.
So that just made me annoyed, and I would always get in the middle of something, even if I didn't know you. If I saw it happening, I'd be right in it, and I made a lot of enemies that way. Mm-hmm. So what?
Life goes on, right?
Yeah, and one guy at the starting line at one of the speed events, he had done so much to try to just make me useless or make me look bad, and a lot of personal attacks too. And I went up to him, and I heard he had been diagnosed with cancer. I said, I'm probably going to pay for this from God, but I know it's terminal, and the sooner the better. This sport will be better when you're gone. And I say that with all Christian relevance, that I don't want you to die, but I know you're going to die, and I'm not sad about it. I'm happy right here that I know you'll eventually be gone. That's how ugly that man was for me to say that and to have that come out of the mouth. And afterwards, I wrestled with whether or not that was a Christian thing to do, but he had made me so mad. But the best part was I never hit him. Or I didn't throw any rocks at his race car.
Exactly. So you do have your limits, right? You do have your limits.
Yeah, I'm not the idea of physical. I have found that the pen is mightier than the sword in many capacities. And frankly, I also believe that the throttle and a good set of Brembo brakes are a lot better than any kind of sword.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
and when they thought they were better drivers, I said, come on.
Yeah.
You know, not just drag racing, but I know lefty, righty, uppy, downy. And I will take you on in any road course, any drag space, anywhere at Bonneville, anytime. And then we'll see who knows what.
Yeah.
So
So-
anyway, it's fun. That's what it's about. It's a competition, but it's an honest competition.
Yeah.
You know?
So tell me about all how fast you've gone and all the actual racing, you know, the speed records and all that. Tell me, how did all that get started?
When I was playing with Landspeed Productions, one of the gentlemen who was the editor of Popular Hot Rodding, he's deceased now, Tom Center. I would say Tommy Center was probably one of my greatest advocates and friends when I first got involved in the publishing. Helped me out, even though he was editor of the Enemy publication. And he raced at Bonneville, and he had an Arden, a flathead, in a roadster. And he came to me and he said, look, he said, I've been driving this and tuning it. It can't do both. He said, I want you to drive this. And then I've got this other Firebird that I want to do it. And I want you to drive, and I'm going to tune it because I can't do both. And so I went, okay, what's Bonneville? And he's the one that taught me about it. Unfortunately, well, fortunately for him, Ford Motor Company hired him away from the magazine, and he became this big PR guy. And then he contracted cancer, and it took him down really quick. And we never did get to race the car, but I had gone, and he was the one that introduced me to it. So for that, I forever thank Tom. And I looked at that as a whole new sporting event. And I thought, oh, look at that. They do it because they love it. They don't do it for money, for sponsors, for this. This is the little engine that could. I think I can. I think I can. They think up an idea. They build it. And the only thing that decides whether you have gone good or gone bad,
Okay, I lost you there.
Yeah.
I lost you there for a second. So the only difference between going good and going bad is
the timing light. And that little timing slip will tell you whether what you dreamt up and built and brought to the starting line, and whether it's and that's the fair race against anyone except the clock and yourself. So that was a big I like that, and I like the people. They are amateurs, but I'm here to tell you, and anybody listening that thinks you're a professional, they're the fastest people.
Hey, I'm losing you.
And this, if you can see it, folks, see the thing on the top? That's FIA. This is my world record that I helped set with Team Vesco and the Turbinator with Donnie Vesco driving. And we set the record in 2001 for the world's fastest wheel-driven vehicle at 458 miles an hour. Wow. That we still own. No one has come to take it, and I really wish somebody would. That's part of it. And it isn't just the driver. It's everybody on the team. I'm not the only one. There's all of us on the team have one of these, you know, complete with the little thing here. And and this is the most important part here. You see that? Those are some of the compressor blades, or what's left of them, because on the return trip, something got into the compressor section on the blades and destroyed that. And as the engine exploded in and out, it cut one of the tires. And Don was traveling faster than 458. pulled the parachutes and realized, flat tire in the left at speed. But because he was a world record motorcycle rider, when the thing would lay down on the flat tire, you have to cross control. So if you want to go right, you turn left. If you and then when he got it back up on the inflated tire on the back, then it turned into a car again, and he had to drive it correctly. And he got that thing stopped, and he never left the race course.
Wow.
That's how he was a hell of a driver. And unfortunately, prostate cancer took him. And as we were updating the car to a little better flow characteristics, and Eric Ritter and Dave Spangler have taken over driving the car. And our world record, 458, is slower than our national record at 492. Now, folks, for Bonneville Racing, and anybody can go, you can take your grocery getter. There's a couple things you got to do, but you can take that and run it on the salt, especially in September at the Utah Salt Flats Racing Association. They have their event is called World of Speed. But a world record, you have to go this way and that way, one measured mile within 60 minutes. National record, you go this way and that way, but you have to do it either on the same day or successive days. And when we ran the 492 and a one-way of 503 miles an hour, the next day we got up and it was raining. Now, some people can go out in the rain, but when you're going to go 500 miles an hour, you can fix all the wrinkled metal. But, you know, you'd like to give the biological unit back to its wife at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And the Bonneville Salt Flats have been in, but not in good condition to run because we have higher safety standards and requirements. And the federal government has not done its job to help out. They say they do. Their mouth works, but they back it up with nothing but more mouth. And so I think what we'll see is while the amateurs in this country, or amateur motorsports anywhere at Bonneville are still the fastest people on earth, because we're not the only record. There's others that are world record. It may be the beginning of the end of racing. We may be living in this kind of golden age, because when I started, there were at least a half a dozen cars that ran in excess of 400 miles an hour. There's maybe 2 or 3 of them now, and many of them don't want to really run, and a couple of them have actually stopped because they would like to be a biological unit that gets old.
So what's wrong? What happened to the salt flats that they're not safe anymore? It's just they haven't been maintained, or there's ruts. What is it about it that doesn't make it safe any longer?
The mining, but it's not the miners' fault. It's the fact that the Bureau of Land Management that's supposed to do the management are essentially crap at it, or they don't care, because there's no trees, there's no flora, there's no bunnies, there's no this to take care of. It's just salt, and they see that as something they can sell. And the mining, they will take the salt brine and they extrapolate out of that the minerals, especially potash, which is very valuable, and I'm all for that. But let's say they take 100 gallons of brine. 97 of those gallons are not usable. 3 of them end up into potash or minerals or stuff, and that's a waste product. So here on this side is Bonneville. This is Interstate 80, and this is where they do all the mining. So when they're done with that, what did your mama tell you when you took something to put it back where you got it? Well, no, they haven't been doing that since the early 60s. They take that 100 gallons, take their 3 pounds out of it, and they drop all the rest on that side. So essentially they have been sucking the Bonneville salt flats dry. In the early 90s, the racers started at their own expense bitching about this and saying, hey, you're not doing the job, and this is what's happening, and the mining's doing it. We don't want to take the mining jobs away. We don't want to take it away from the people in the city of Wendover or West Wendover, but could you please put some of this stuff back? you've got to buy all this big equipment to just move this stuff around so your salination ponds stay clean. Give it back. The pipes that you bring it this way, just turn the valve around and send it that way when you're not drying things out. Oh, well, we tried that. And finally in 1997, it was a salt replenishment. They did it for 5 years. And remember that thing I showed you back there?
Yeah.
Well, that was the first time the Team Vesco could go out and take that car at 450. And we felt that there was enough salt, long enough and deep enough, to keep that car stable. So we proved that that project of putting the salt back, and not all of it, just a small amount, worked. With that world record as the proof. Of course, there's the scientists that say I'm all full of baloney, that I don't know what I'm talking about. I will take her and anybody else on because I did all the research in the mining company. I know the science. I don't have a degree. Bring it on, just like that. And so that worked for a while. Then the company was sold, and the new company, they're real good at excuses. I think people who work at the mining company, Trepid right now, they probably worked for the BLM before they got a job there, or if they want to retire, they could go work for the BLM, because the same amount of nonsense is going back and forth. And see, this is how I'm going to make enemies, because people watch this are going to be mad. But the bottom line is we're not asking anybody to shut down anything, but we are asking them to play fair, because Landspeed racers have been at the Bonneville Salt Flats since 1914. And this is the little people. We're not making any money of this. But if they don't, then Melinda, this is, I'm predicting here that in not too long a time, there will be no racing, because too many people will end up getting killed. I have buried a number of them. I have watched them. One of our 400-mile-an-hour fellas, when his parachute came off the car, I was at the 7 Mile, and I watched the chute come off, and I thought, oh, God. And he ended up crashing. But thankfully, he stayed alive until his wife could get to the hospital from another state. And the reason he died is because he didn't go straight. He was heading straight for Interstate 80. And this was a man who decided this was his fun and that he should not endanger others. And he turned at plus 4 miles an hour, which caused the instability of the car. Now, if he had the longer space, maybe he wouldn't have had to do that. Maybe not. But this is my perception of the situation. And until you go to hospitals and you go to funerals, you don't understand just how much an amateur person gives up. Sometimes, sometimes all of it. But when they win, oh, the joy is just so great.
I know. I lost you there for a second.
You know what makes my camera?
So after they win, and the joy is unbelievable.
Is just euphoria. Euphoria has nothing to do with how fast you go, but what kind of challenge have you mastered? And the great joy, one of the things that taught me that in an invaluable way, the guy that raced mini bikes was best friends with the guy who had the world record for motorcycles. And when he got the record, the motorcycle guy was over there dancing around like a 10-year-old kid for his friend. Stood back. This was all about joy and doing something. This was their Everest. This was their transatlantic. This was Gina Yeager going around with the Voyager nonstop in one tank of gas. That's what this was. That's what they do. And so that's why I think I enjoy land speed racing more than anything else. It's also where I found more women who wear helmets and fireproof underwear than any other section of motorsport on the planet. And they are the fastest girls on earth. Oh,
for sure. I wanted you to say, share about your book, Bonneville's Women of Land Speed Racing. So tell me about your book.
Well, I did another little book. It's the same thing. These are these Arcadia books. They're mainly pictures with big, heavy captions. Well, Well, I treated every caption as like a mini story. And when I did the first book on Bonneville, which told the story of all of racing in Bonneville, I had observed things where I thought certain people needed to get more attention. And that goes back to the itty bitty shitties. The guys, the hot rod guys, and most of them are wonderful people. Please don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful sport with 98% wonderful people, but there's 2% that just needs to go sit in the corner or get put in a closet. They had certain prejudices that were stupid. For instance, the first, motorcycles. Well, you couldn't be a hot rodder because you only have 2 wheels. And then the other one were the thrust powered car. Well, you can't be a hot rodder because you don't have any pistons. Who told you what a hot rod was?
Yeah.
A hot rod could be electric. Excuse me, some of the first cars were electric. They didn't have ICE engines in them, thank you. And that was the 2. So I devoted a chapter to motorcycle and a chapter to axial flow in my book. And I'm sorry, one of the reasons most people on the planet know about Bonneville has got nothing to do with pistons and everything to do with jet cars and rocket cars. Because they were, and the Americans were the fastest on earth. And that's where the big fight came. But then the other one was not just itty bitty shitties, but it was the collective of teeny tiny testicles who they would get beat. It was one thing if Tom beat George, but if Louise beat George, George just didn't get beat. He got beat by a woman, by a girl. Not even a woman, a girl. I instantly became a girl. Yeah. And I went, oh, that's nuts. I'm a pilot. I sail. I race. I have never met a car, a truck, a motorcycle, an airplane, or a boat that operated differently because of the gender of the operator. Yeah. It has only 2 things in input. Good input gets good response. Bad input gets bad response. That's it. Those are the only 2 factors. And either you know how to operate that thing or you don't. Or you know how to do really well with it or you don't. And that has been my observation as a journalist and as a photographer, and also as someone who, I'm one of the few who play this game, but also race this game or drive this game. I'm an older woman now, and I just bought a brand new 2024 Subaru WRX-TR track rated, and it's got Brembo brakes all the way around. And let me tell you, I won't tell you where, but I can take a 90-degree corner at about 55 miles an hour, and it will not step out 1/16 of an inch. And when it does that, I want to stop and kiss the steering wheel. I love that car. It is the most obedient car. I've never met a man who was more obedient than that car.
Oh my gosh. You're so funny.
Yeah, so this book, so we can talk about the girls, not me.
Yeah.
I wanted to show all the women who did, and it's kind of started, well, look at what opened up. See, God made me do this. See this page?
Uh-huh.
Okay, it started with the other book when I had taken this picture, and I knew most of the women in the picture, but not all of them. And I called Delvine Manning, or Delvine Reber now. She managed the Bonneville Motorcycle Speed Trial. She's the only female producer in the country on land speed racing that runs an event. And I said, Delvine, I know you know some of these gals. I want to make sure I have them in the caption. So she did that for me. But when she came back, she said, Louise, do you realize what you have there? I said, yeah, a lot of gals that have set records. She said, Louise, those 20 women account for more than 200 land speed records between all of them. And I thought, oh, I should have known that. I make myself the historian. So I started asking the question, how many women ride and drive? And as I started to find so many, I thought, well, wait. How many have set records? And it was in that time for myself. The first little book was published Most of the people at the publishing company were girls, women. And they said, oh, we didn't know that women did this. Well, gee, if there were a few more, we could do a book. I said, there are, I will, and I did. In about 100 days, because we did this in February, she said we could have the book on women, but I had to have it done in about 120 days, the whole book, all the pictures, everything. Woo! And I wanted to bring it to Bonneville for the racing season. In about 100 days, I identified more than 350 women, ages 16 to 80, who had set more than 1,000 land speed records. Wow. And this is not just me looking it up. This is me calling them, asking them, and getting their time slip or their record certification. I have this all certified. And I thought, wow. And that is only since 1972, when women were finally allowed to race, because the hot rodders came out to Bonneville in 1949, but girls couldn't go because it was too dangerous. And as Wally Parks told me, one of the things was we thought, well, they're wives and mothers, and my God, if they got killed or hurt, this would be a bad taint on us. We're having a hard enough time trying not to be, animals and thugs, that we're doing this safely. So we just thought it better to keep them in the pits. And it wasn't until, again, the motorcycles, which I won't ruin it, you'll have to get the book, got involved, and that they forced the Southern California Timing Association to allow women to enter a race in 1972. So those 1,000 records only started since 1972. There were one or two, maybe three, some women that raced, but only because their husband essentially told the guys in charge of the SCTA, and who's going to stop her? You're going to come through me? So she had a champion. And of course, the gal that's on the cover, Paula Murphy, God bless her, one of my best friends, they did world record setting stuff out there. So, the itty bitty hot rodders couldn't do anything. So this tells the story and it explains how it happens. And I did this so that I could show that there are women of every single ethnicity, every single education level, every single intellectual level, every cultural level, from all over the world. I made it a point to go find them because some of them came and did their thing and went home. I mean, there's a gal that went over 300 miles an hour. She's the fastest girl in Poland. She's the only girl in Poland, I think. A couple of in Europe and some of the other spots. I mean, in the Asian world and in Africa. I mean, I went and found them all because I wanted to show women, and not necessarily women, no offense, gals, but I wanted to show the young girls, look, if you want to go to beauty school, you can go to the finish, and you can go to the top of the podium if you want. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping to do. Just look at it, go. You may not like it, but you may find that this is something you've been looking for your whole life. Mm-hmm. All I'm asking. That's why I did the book. And I give talks for the Society of Automotive Engineers, for the historians, for various schools. I'll be going to Allentown, Pennsylvania for the SAE very shortly. A group up in Canada want me. I'll talk to grammar school kids. I just want to, you can tell I talk a lot.
Well, but it's your passion. It's totally your passion. And when you have something that you love so much, it just naturally comes out. It just naturally flows. That's for sure.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's like a supercharger, that if you don't let it out, you're going to explode.
Exactly. So where can we buy the book?
Oh, it's on my website, but you can go to Arcadia and get it there. If you buy it from me, I will sign it. Yeah, I'll sign it if that means anything. Sometimes I think for my first book, I told people, I said, I think the more valuable books are going to be the ones that I didn't sign, because I think I signed almost every one they printed.
Yeah.
But that's a great joy.
Yeah.
Again, we'll go back to why the mouse fired me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a kid from the south side of Chicago with a high school education that's done all this. And not because I was smart or stupid, but because, like you said, that passion, I wanted to do it. And if I can do it, you can do it, whoever you are. The gal that was 80 years old started racing motorcycles when she was 75 and set 5 AMA records on a motorcycle that her husband tuned for her, and stopped at 80 because that was enough. She'd had fun. The girl at 16, if I can find the picture, I'll show it because I'm so cool. Robert Beck took this picture. Oh, and I have to say something about that. She was able to set the record because she had just gotten her driver's license. Her family had a roadster. She came out. She was able to drive, set the record. She got a land speed record before she got her high school diploma. Robert Beck took the picture. That's the other thing. I want you to know that in this book, and they're all named in there, I couldn't have done it, especially not without the motorcycle. There were people who gave me pictures to use in this book that I could not have done because I didn't have all the pictures. Bob Beck, Horst, Scooter Grubb, and there's many, and Zane McNary, and I don't want to start naming them because I'm going to forget somebody and they're going to be mad at me. But most of these are mine, but many of them came from other people, for which I'm very grateful, but they understood what they were contributing to. And they're saying, oh, it's not like you're going to make all the royalty money. I just got my royalty statement for this book for the whole 6 months. I made $174. They sold, I think, 2,000 books. I get 3 or 4%. The publisher gets all the money, which I didn't know at the time, but I didn't care because I wanted the book. And I think in the future, I might want to do it myself. I make more money as a sales whore. If I buy the book and I sell the book, I make a decent amount of money on it. And that's because I become my own salesperson.
Right.
So that's it. And that's transparent. You know, I'm not trying to fool anybody. But if you just want the book for as cheap as you can get it, get it on Amazon. You could probably get somebody's book that I signed to somebody else, cheaper. Everybody shops. Right. But I really enjoy it. And I would really like to do talks about some of these other women that I found out about. I had seen, but I did not know. Yeah. What they have done. Wow.
Great story.
I am in awe. I am in awe.
Yeah.
I am
in awe. I am in awe of you. I've just been sitting here trying to take all this in, all the things you've done. And it wasn't easy when you started doing this. It's not easy now for young women to be involved in any kind of motorsports. But when you started back, it was even more difficult.
1979.
So I admire you for all the things you've done and how you've really promoted and support women. And I'm going to order your book as soon as we hang up today because I can't wait to read it. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah, the only one that I really remember that was fighting like but she fought on a different level. Her name at the time was Jean Lindemood, and then she became Jean Jennings. We just lost her recently, but Jean was another firecracker. I enjoyed it. She lived in Detroit. We didn't see each other, but I had great respect for her. And there were a couple of other gals that were professional racers at the time, and took on publishing, who were kind enough to talk to me. And that includes some of the guys. And I couldn't have done it by themselves. There are people that did help me. There are people, Ed Iskandarian. Oh, and I want to mention this. Ed Iskandarian, when I started at Peterson, he was, the cam father. He was one of the leaders in speed equipment. He was the first president of SEMA, for Pete's sake. He was always friendly to me. And recently, I've been involved with the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America for many years as a judging panel voter, and now as a nomination committee person. And Ed was just voted in, and in March, he called me and asked me if I would personally induct him into the Hall of Fame at Daytona. So I've got all his stuff. And this is my this was at one of the events. That's Ed, classic, with his pockets entirely too full and a cigar in his mouth.
Yeah.
But it's easier to say, I don't think there's an engine type on the planet other than maybe an axial flow that has not at one time or another had a Isky racing cam in it. But he was kind to me, and he helped me, and he explained things to me. And there were a number of those type of people. Ed is 103 years old.
Oh my goodness.
He goes to work every day. He's probably at work right now, and he still has ideas. He may not be doing as much. His son Richard runs the company. His daughter-in-law Norma is one of the top administrative people there, and they still put stuff together. But Ed is always thinking. He came up with 2 things a couple of days ago. Called me, and he's going on and on. I'm going, okay. And then he says, and we never did do anything or promote anything with the historic races. And all of a sudden I understood why he was telling me this story. And I went, oh my gosh, you're right. Short story. An Iskanderian racing cam, not one that he sponsored, was bought by a guy and his brother who worked with another guy in the East Coast. They put it in the car and found that their car ran much, much better. And the 3 of them were the organizers for the very first sports car race ever held at Watkins Glen. And the brothers won the race. They were Sam and Miles Collier, who now runs the Revs Institute.
Wow.
And they recently restored the car. Ed had no idea about this. He's 102, 3. And they showed the letters, and they said, can you restore this camshaft? And they restored it for the restoration of the car. And that's where they found out what an Iskanderian racing cam had done for sports car racing, and in this case, historic racing. So now he wants me to write a story. He called me and said he wants me to write the story about Miles and his brother, and and he said, we really got to let people know that we can do the historics and sports cars. 103!
That's amazing. Oh, just fabulous.
And that's not just one day. Almost every day he's got something. And more than his ability to do racing cams, I mean, he can look at a camshaft and he can probably tell you what kind of engine it goes into. But his kindness of how he reaches out to anybody and talks to them and how he treats human beings is exceptional. Absolutely exceptional in what I have seen. And when I get up, I'll be telling the people there, I'm not going to give a list of this. Y'all know who he is. And if you don't know, when you leave, I want you to know this one thing. And that's what I will be telling them about that. And when he wanted me to do this, I thought, well, what about your son? I don't want to get the family upset. A family member should do this, not me. No, Landspeed, got to be you. And
you have to feel so honored.
I am.
Like it's something that came out of nowhere and you could have never dreamt it. And what a special night that's going to be.
Oh, honey, believe me. And so I thought, but this is on the technical category. Well, I understand how you grind these, and I can build engines. I've never ground a camshaft in my life. So when we were back in California, I went, I got to learn. I said, Ed, even if you got to sit in a chair, I want to put a camshaft into one of the grinders. I want you to tell me how to do it. I want to grind a camshaft so that I can stand up in front of them and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you know that I am an experienced camshaft grinder, taught by none other than Ed Iskanderian. Then I'm going to tell them their story. And then maybe at the end, I don't know, I'll say, oh, and by the way, you remember I told you I was grinding those cams? Yeah, well, here's the one camshaft lobe that I ground.
That's going to be so cool.
Something like that.
You got to do it.
Because Ed Iskanderian taught me how to do it, you know? And so I thought that would be an honor to the technical, that he can still teach you at 103. And his quality control woman at Isky gave me the high sign that I did it right. And she has worked for Ed, I think 17 years. A woman.
Yeah, good for her.
There you go. So there you go. What else do you want to know, or should I just shut up?
Louise, I've just been sitting here just soaking everything in. I think you've done a great job of sharing what you're doing, and you're just never going to give up. You're just going to keep going and going. So probably social media, is that the best way to follow you?
I have a website. I haven't updated it because we recently just moved, and I had some very serious medical issues that have all been resolved. God provides, and He still wants me to raise Cain around here, so I'm kind of going to do it. But we're just getting started. It's actually probably just the past month that we have settled and got most everything sorted. So I'm going to be doing this thing at the Motorsports Hall of Fame in Daytona in March. I am starting to write my autobiography. I am putting together an inventory of all my photos, my files, my books, my television shows, the films, all the subject matter thing, my radio shows, podcasts, and I'm putting it into an archive and talking to university libraries and a couple of museums to have that archived into that, so that when I'm dead 50 years, people will still be able to find out about what the little amateur racers at the Bonneville Salt Flats did. So
that'd be awesome.
And I'm looking for somebody that will not only take it, but I will take care of it.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
And that's tough stuff. They all want to take it because then they figure they can keep it for a while and then sell it at auction and make money. Because I've seen museums do that.
Yeah.
Stuff and break some hearts.
Right.
And destroy people who thought that they were honored and they were valued, and they were just a piece of meat.
Yeah.
So
happens all the time. Louise, thank you so much for taking time today to share your story. I mean, I knew some about you, but you've shared things that I had no idea. And I'm just so tickled that I got to be the one to sit here and listen. I didn't have to ask a lot. You shared everything that I could imagine that I wanted you to share. And I just appreciate that you were on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me, tell the story and hopefully influence a couple of the others. And I want to leave the gals and the guys, mainly the gals, with this. Never let anyone judge your abilities by their limitations. I can't tell you how many times people say, "Oh, don't do that. It's dangerous." For who? For you, maybe. But don't go up there. It's too high. For who? Don't do that. I'll put on a harness and hang off the bottom of a helicopter if that's where I need to get the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I'm going to know those harnesses are right.
Yeah, exactly. But don't let anybody squash your dreams.
Yeah, that's it. Don't let them judge your ability and your value by their limitations because they think they think that. They don't know, and especially if they don't know you.
Yeah. Exactly. Great way to end the show. I appreciate that so much.
It's been a pleasure, and go out there, stay safe.
I will, and you stay safe as well.
So far, so good. God provides.
He does. Thank you, Louise.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. We hope you've been inspired by the stories I shared today and feel more connected to the amazing community of women in motorsports. Remember, whether you're behind the wheel, in the pits, or cheering from the stands, your story matters. And together, we're driving change and celebrating every milestone. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who loves motorsports as much as you do. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more incredible stories. So until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep racing through life. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, where every woman's story is worth celebrating.